Kia ora tātou and welcome to Local Body 2013, Dunedin Television's guide to this year's local body elections. I'm Dave Gooselink and I'll be meeting with some of the candidates standing in the Dunedin City Council elections. Let's take a quick look at the three wards in the Greater Dunedin area. The largest is the Central Ward, where the majority of voters live. There are 35 candidates standing here for 11 seats on the Dunedin City Council. There are 2 seats on offer in the Mosgiel Tairi ward and 3 candidates standing for your vote here. And finally, Waikouiti Coast Chalmers, where sitting City Councillor Andrew Noon has been re-elected unopposed in the single seat there. Now, we've already met many of the candidates standing for your vote in the Central Ward. Let's take a look at the schedule for the rest of the week. Tonight our attention turns to the 2 smaller wards. We'll meet the 3 candidates in the Mosgiel Tairi ward and chat with Andrew Noon from the Waikouiti Coast Chalmers ward. And tomorrow, Friday, we'll meet the 9 candidates standing for the city's top job, the Dunedin Mayoralty, in an extended length special. Tonight, as we said, we'll be hearing from the 3 candidates standing in the Mosgiel Tairi ward. Let's find out a little bit more about our group. Martin Dillon has spent 15 years on the Mosgiel Tairi Community Board. He's also currently a member of the Aquatic Facilities Working Party on Council and is keen to ensure the community has a voice in these discussions. Kate Wilson has been a City Councillor for the last 2 terms and she's excited by the clear vision for the city's future. As a geography and law graduate, she's keen to assist with the development of the next district plan. She's standing under the Greater Dunedin ticket. And finally, Mike Lord. He's a dairy farmer from Berwick. He is a member of the Mosgiel Rotary Club and is active in community, church and youth programs. He was recently president of Otago Federated Farmers and is also standing under the Greater Dunedin ticket. Now we'll begin by giving each candidate 30 seconds to discuss why they're standing for your vote in this election. That'll be followed up by a few questions from myself. Starting with the panel on the left, Martin first up. Martin Dillon, tell us why you're standing for election for the Dunedin City Council.
I'm passionate, I'm independent and I'm experienced. 15 years on the Mosgiel Tairi Community Board has given me a great insight into the issues that we have on the Tairi and especially in Mosgiel.
Martin, obviously you talked about your background in community board. How do you see, or what's given you the impetus to try and look at stepping up to the Dunedin City Council?
What I find with the community board is that we are the grassroots of the community, but we fail to actually get traction at council. Mosgiel is the growth area of the city, where the rate is increasing, and yet we don't seem to be getting anything back.
So you think that, and we're going to discuss this a little bit more, but you think that council needs to take more look at a greater area of the greater city? Well,
too many councillors see Dunedin City as the city itself and not the Tairi. And the Tairi is the jewel in the crown.
Why do you live out there? What's made you passionate about the region?
I live out there for a lot of reasons. There was schooling for my children. As I say, I've spent 18 years on Board of Trustees on the Tairi. The weather, it's flat, and it's a community spirit and a real good, nice community.
Excellent. Martin Dillon, we'll be hearing more from you later in the show. Thank you. Our second candidate in the Mosgiel Tairi ward is Kate Wilson, a sitting City Councillor. Kate, tell us why you're standing for re-election in the Dunedin City Council.
I'm standing for re-election because I've had the privilege of living right in the centre of Dunedin and I now live on the outskirts in Middlemarch. I'm passionate about Dunedin as being a fantastic place to live in all parts of it. I think I can offer governance skills that I've learnt over the last 6 years and 6 years previously on the Strathtairi Community Board 12 years ago. I think I have an interesting perspective for my training and I'd love to serve you again.
Excellent. Kate, now you've been City Councillor for 2 terms. What do you think is your proudest achievement over that period?
I think we're turning the debt levels round. I think turning the process and the people round. I think that's what governance should be about, not about projects. And the other involvement is enabling community groups to get what they need and want, and empowering the community. I have a strong background in community groups, and I think that's something that we can do better at, but I think we've done a major change at.
Do you think the council is generally moving in the right direction? Are things looking positive?
I think it's been a big shift. We had, in the previous council, there was obviously some big topics to discuss. I think the way we're approaching things now are much better and much easier for people to be involved in decision making.
Is it important to have a mix of views on council?
I think it's exceedingly important. We're meant to represent the whole city and not just a bland version of the city. That's why Greater Dunedin has a diverse bunch of people standing for it. We need to have really good discussions. Excellent.
Kate Wilson, we'll hear more from you shortly in the show. And our final candidate in this panel, Mike Lord, tell us why you're standing for election for the Dunedin City Council.
I'm standing for the council because I'm passionate also about Dunedin. I love Mosgiel, I love living on the Torrey. I've lived here for 25 years and I just feel it's time I want to put something back into the community that has been good to me. It's been a great place to raise a family. We've raised our kids, we've sent them to the local school, and I want to do something for the community.
Excellent. Mike, you've talked about a great family and you enjoy living on the Torrey. What is it about the area that adds to the community?
I think, as has already been said, the weather. I love the weather out there. We don't get that coastal breeze, and I just enjoy the people out there, and I enjoy working with the community and the people around me.
Now, background as a dairy farmer, what skills would you bring to the council table?
Well, I see myself as more than just a dairy farmer. I see myself as a businessman, and for the last 25 years I've run a business with my wife and we've done it well. I also have some governance roles. I'm the trustee on Maranatha Home and the Old People's Home in Mosgiel, and also a Christian camp at Lakeland Park in Queenstown. I've got governance roles on those. And
what do you see, why have you put yourself forward? What do you see as missing from the current council?
I think that one of the important things that I see is that we need to make it easier to do business. At the moment it's difficult for people to do a lot of things. The regional plan the current plan makes it difficult. We need to identify areas with the Resource Management Act that make doing business difficult and simply remove or make them easier to do.
Excellent. Thank you to our 3 panellists. Now we'll continue with questions for our panel, starting with the issue for the area. What do you think are the particular issues related to the Mosgiel Tauri ward that the community is focused on and that you will be focused on in the next term if elected? We'll start on the left with Martin.
Well, there's quite a number of issues in Mosgiel at the moment. The heavy traffic in Gordon Road. When I joined the community board in 1998, a working party was set up to discuss arterial routes. To date, nothing's happened. The latest transportation strategy says that the new heavy trucks up to 50 tonnes won't be able to go down Gordon Road, will need to go down Riccarton Road. Riccarton Road can't take 20-tonne trucks. So that's an issue. In the paper this week we saw Wrightson's Wool opening up a new wool store. 20,000 bales, truck taking about 60 bales, that's more trucks. We've got Inland Port, Otago, more trucks.
Excellent. Moving on to Kate, what are the particular issues that you see in the Mosgiel Tauri ward at the moment?
A number, because it's not just Mosgiel, but it's much greater than that. I think there are some issues coming about through the second generation plan, highlighting some flood-prone areas where residents and businesses should be developing, so the spatial plan and implications for that. Where we should be allowing growth in Dunedin, and obviously Mosgiel's been a great growing area, but then we have stormwater issues and things that come from greater development. So it's that whole balance that we have to look at. The roading is certainly an issue out on Mosgiel especially, and we're working through those issues. In fact, what we changed in the transportation plan allows for a lot better on that. Cool. Jobs would be the other one.
Excellent. And finally, for Mike, what do you see as the particular issues in the Mosgiel Tauri ward?
Well, look, we've heard from 2 candidates and both of them have brought up some good, relevant points. I think one of the things that I'm actually quite happy about is to see some of the progress. We're the fastest growing area on the Tauri. We've got houses being built, and every house needs a builder, every house needs an electrician and a plumber. And so I'm actually quite positive. We're getting a new supermarket in the next year or two, we're getting a major redevelopment of the high school. I'm just really excited about all those things. Alongside that, we do need to work on some of these other problems as well.
Excellent. We'll take a look more at the ward in a moment. Back in a moment, we'll take a closer look at the Mosgiel Tidy ward with our 3 candidates. Back soon. Back to Local Body 2013, where we're looking tonight at the Mosgiel Tidy Ward with our 3 panellists, and I'm going to start in the middle this time with Kate Wilson. It's been suggested that it's very difficult to stick up for the area with just 2 councillors from the ward around the council table. What's the answer to that?
Well, I don't necessarily think that's true. I think once you're elected to council, the wards are just for the purpose of election and getting people on. You have to represent the whole city after that. And in any debate, it is about the merit of the project for the city, and you have to take that view. In fact, you'll be breach of standing orders otherwise. But I think that for the good projects and good reasons, then the whole of the city has been well treated, and it has. I have to admire the councillors from all over who do tend to have a very good perception of the whole city, and it isn't a concern that I've had. Yeah.
Excellent. Mike, for you, do you think that it's difficulty with only 2 councillors around the table to sort of push the views of the tidy?
I think 2 people is more than adequate to push the views. It's just whether 2 people has got enough ability to actually draw the rest of the councillors back our way when we're needing representation. It's certainly something I'll be aiming to try and do.
Excellent. And for Martin, what do you think? Do you think 2 councillors is enough to push the views and just make them aware of what the issues are on the tidy?
Oh, I do. I think that the councillors that are appointed need to have a strong voice. But you've still got, as Kate said, you've still got to work as a city. However, we are a community that needs to be looked after as well. There is a perception of Bombay Hills with some of the councillors, and that has to be overcome. And I think that's what the councillors from the ward need to work with.
Excellent. Another question for our panel. The council's large long-term debt is being mentioned by many candidates this election campaign. Given the spending restrictions of that and the lack of ability for new projects, do you think that the idea of the Mosgiel Aquatics Centre should be a short or a long-term priority? Mike, I'll start with you. The Aquatics Centre, is that something we should be pursuing in the next term, or is it a longer-term project?
I think it's something that I do believe we can look at in the next term, but I think we do need to look at local Mosgiel people. We have to say, how much do we want this and how much are we prepared to pay? It may be that we need a targeted rate, that affects the local Mosgiel community more, and then we might have to step out further to the rest of the city to help contribute to the rest. There's a lot of things we can look at in partnerships.
Martin Dillon, it's obviously an issue that you know well. Is it something that's needed in the short term, or is it something that you're looking at longer term?
Well, we've been out at 9 years. Another 5 years is not going to make any difference. But what we do need is surety that it will happen. Depending on how big it is, there will be some fundraising. But the important thing is just not a Mosgiel pool. It's a Southern Endowment pool, which encompasses a third, if not more, of the city. A proven example is our playground. It was fundraised to an extra $750,000 by the local community. The survey was done in January. 2/3 of the people that were there did not come from Mosgiel. So Mosgiel is not 1,000 miles away. It is only over the hill, and people do travel.
And Kate Wilson, do you think that the Aquatic Centre is something, obviously given the limited budget for council, is that something to pursue?
Look, I was on the Aquatics Working Party as well, and I'm very aware of the facts. I'm very aware that the pools are very expensive things to run. I've been on the past president of the Swimming Pool in Middlemarch Committee. But I know what communities can do. I know what our community does. We fundraise about $30,000 a year from our very small community regularly for our pool. I see it as being something that the community can start on any day. The first thing that has to be done is agreed to site, and if the community can agree to the site, then you've got a plan in place. And if that can be led by the community, that breaks down a whole lot of barriers. If you get community buy-in and they start running, even if they haven't got council committed, it's very hard to stop that momentum. And I would think that that community could start on that right now, because I think, and fundraising, it'll happen. It'll be hard, but it can be done.
Excellent.
It will have to be substantial fundraising.
Now, the Mosgiel and the Tidy have both made headlines this year for some of the wrong reasons with the issue of economic development. What, for our candidates this evening, what do you think the Council's role is in promoting the economy and economic regional development? I'll start with Martin on the left.
Well, I think it's one of the most important roles of Council. I'm a little disheartened by the fact that Council tells us of our strengths, and we have got a lot of strengths in Dunedin, but we have not identified our weaknesses or opportunities or threats. And to date, all we've pushed is our strengths. And to have economic development, we have weaknesses. And we must identify those and make sure that we can overcome them or put in place a system which will attract businesses.
Excellent. Kate Wilson, what's the Council's role in advocating for regional development?
We have to set the base framework which makes business easy and welcoming. I don't know that we can create jobs, although I think it's important to look at what people have done in the past, and I've certainly helped create jobs in my area. If you get the framework right, and I disagree with Martin in that I think the economic development strategy does do a lot of that stuff. It looks at what we can do as a city, and I'm really proud of the work that the Council's done on that. But we've always got work, and I think it's a community-based. The community has to do some of that work. We have to say, yes, we can employ someone, we're going to try it.
Mike, what role do you see the City Council as playing in economy and regional development?
I think the Council plays a huge role. I think it's really, really important that the Council set the ground rules right. And one of those things is we need to look at why we can't do things. Often people need to notify for consents. The Resource Management Act is thrown up time and time again as a stumbling block. Why not let these things be stepping stones instead of stumbling blocks? We need to actually, what's wrong with being the least regimented city in New Zealand? Why do we have to be one of the hardest ones to do business?
Excellent. A final question for our panel this evening from Mosgiel Tidy Ward. Every election, candidates talk about greater consultation and engagement with the community. But how do you feel that, given some previous efforts like holding public forums tend to attract just a handful of people? What's the answer in terms of greater engagement with the community? I'll start with Mike Lord on the end there. What do you think the Council's doing well? Where could they do better?
I think the Council do quite well. I think they probably could do better. They could do better, but one of the things that we need to do is we actually need to get people to take an interest themselves. You know, it's not just about what the Council does, it's what we respond and how we respond. And people need to do it. As I've been out getting around knocking on doors, I've been amazed at the number of people who say, I've never voted before, I don't care about local politics. For me as a ratepayer, that's a fairly big chunk of my budget that goes out, and so that makes me interested and concerned about it. And I think other people need to take the same attitude.
Fair enough. Martin, for you, what do you see as public meetings perhaps don't work like they may have in the past? What do you see as Council's role in terms of engaging and with communicating with people?
Well, that's a fact, because on the 15 years of Community Board, we've had meetings and no one turns up. The annual plan, we've had at the New World, and they don't bother. It's apathy. Some of the credit has to go to Council for doing the job that they're elected to do. There are people out there who are satisfied with what Council are doing. You all have the groups who aren't. They're vocal. They make their point known, public forums. So I think if Council carries on and does what they're doing, it gives the opportunity for the people to attend. You can't take a horse to water and make it drink.
Excellent. And Kate Wilson, obviously there is that difficulty of apathy sometimes, but what can the Council do more to engage a community better?
Well, having sat on the Council in 2007, I think we had a fairly engaged community then, and maybe apathy is a sign that things are okay. I certainly know that we've done a heck of a lot more options for consultation with Facebook and People's Panel and other things, but it's a difficult one, and it's making people feel engaged, and that's part of community building that we probably have to do some more work on. If you get people engaged with the community, then they become willing workers in the community as well. So that's the stuff under community development, which I really look forward to championing a bit more in the next council, should I be there.
Excellent. Thank you to our panellists this evening, to our three panellists, Martin Dillon, Kate Wilson and Mike Lord. Thanks for your time this evening. Now, Now, after the break, we'll be chatting with the already re-elected candidate Andrew Noon in the Waikouiti Coast Chalmers ward. Back in a moment. Welcome back to Local Body 2013, where we're now with the sole candidate standing in the Waikouiti Coast Chalmers ward, Andrew Noon, who has been re-elected and unopposed. Sitting City Councillor Andrew, welcome.
Thank you very much, Dave.
So obviously you were the sole candidate out there. Do you think that reflects you're doing a good job, or do you think it reflects a bit of voter apathy out in the Waikouiti Coast Chalmers area?
It's probably a bit of both, I suppose, at the end of the day. I've been around for quite a while, and a lot of people do know me, and I suppose that's quite an advantage. But as you say, there's a lot of people that aren't interested in local government and don't choose to vote. So there's about 50% of people out there. So there is a bit of apathy. So I'd agree with both of those comments, really.
What's given you the impetus to, you've been around as a councillor for a number of years, what's given you the impetus to continue to stand? What is it that keeps you going?
I think one of my motivations is that, I just come from a rural background and ordinary bloke. I'm not a politician, but I enjoy trying to achieve things for my community, and I suppose as a city councillor, working for the city, I get a great deal of satisfaction in seeing things improve, and I suppose getting the best bang for the ratepayer's dollar. That's probably my motivation. Yes.
Now you're in the Waikouiti Coast Chalmers ward. What are the particular issues, or looking at the community? Is there particular issues in the community or in that region?
There's nothing probably major in the sort of Waikouiti Coast Chalmers ward. However, there are some smaller projects, such as the restoration of the Aramoana Wharf out there on the Aramoana Spit. It's been a community-driven project where we're looking for a bit of city support, not necessarily in monetary terms, but just really support in principle. That's one thing, and I suppose in general terms, I think there's a demand from the constituents to ensure that what we've got is well maintained. So the roads are well maintained, the mud tanks are cleaned out, and the streets are swept, and those sorts of things. I suppose that would probably generally sum up what the fundamental issue out there is.
Being a candidate from a single ward, or single candidate from a ward, and also being an independent, is there any issues with that, or any difficulties given there's obviously the Greater Dunedin grouping on council who not necessarily a political party, but a grouping? Is independent important?
Very important to me. I can still recall my first council meeting back in 1998 when I was rung by another senior councillor to suggest I should be voting a particular way, and I think ever since that day I've felt that it's important to retain your independence. It's important to keep an open mind, listen to the debate, try and analyse what the issues are, and then come to a position. So yeah, I prefer to be independent, and I think that it's stood me in good stead with my community. I've never heard people promoting the idea that I should be part of a party or affiliated to a group. But so yeah, I like to retain my independence. Yes.
Obviously, the council's large long-term debt is being mentioned by many candidates in this election campaign. Given the spending restrictions of council, what do you think? Is there any projects we can pursuing, or is it just a matter of settling down and looking at where else budgets can be trimmed?
Well, like the current council, we've made a commitment to reduce the overall city debt by 70 million by 2022 or 21-22. I'm fully supportive of that. I think that's sort of our starting point. Can we squeeze some projects in that period? Well, question mark. They would have to be projects that obviously demand support, either because the community are desperate for an improvement, the community may be prepared to roll up their sleeves and contribute as well. Those are the sorts of things I suppose we've got to weigh up on a case-by-case basis. But I think fundamentally I want to see the overall level of debt reduced. So that's probably my position. And it probably comes also back to the point before I mentioned about maintaining what we've got, so I think that's important as well, to ensure that the city looks clean and tidy and that sort of thing. I suppose that's something that I would like us to continue to focus on.
And looking at, along with debt, what other issues do you see as the biggest challenges facing the city in the next 3 years, say?
Well, I suppose revenue, if you exclude rates, for example, if our companies through DCHL can have some good financial years, that's obviously going to be beneficial. Then it gives us some more options when we think about our current financial commitment. And I suppose you can also include the Waipori Fund in there as well. So, it'll be good to think, we're coming out of the global financial crisis, and like it or not, we're all part of that as a global economy. So, if that was able to be rectified in terms of greater dividend coming across, that would give us some flexibility. I suppose that once again, that comes back to being the key driver for us to be able to consider any other potential projects.
Excellent. And just finally, we've talked about, some voters have suggested they're looking for bold vision, bold ideas from councillors this term. As an already re-elected councillor, have you got any bold visions or ideas that you're on your wish list?
Look, I'm conservative by nature, and I think it's steady as she goes. I wouldn't like to lift the community's expectations or hopes that this new council will be delivering any significant projects over the next 3 years. But I think for those people who are perhaps looking for the bold, visionary projects, I think just accept that the previous councils have made a significant improvement to the city by way of the assets that they've invested in, and I think we're in the position now to take advantage of that. If you compare with where Christchurch is at in terms of visitor numbers and that sort of thing, I think that if we can over the next few years encourage more people to visit here, simply because our attractions they're numerous, and and we are the eco capital of New Zealand. So we've just got to keep pushing that, and I think try and ensure that our local economy keeps ticking over.
Excellent. Andrew Noon, thanks for your time this evening. Re-elected councillor in the Waikuiti Coast Chalmers Ward, and one councillor who won't be nervous at the end of postal voting this year. Well, thanks for joining us tonight. Remember, we're here every weeknight meeting the candidates. You can also catch repeat screenings of our shows at the weekends and in the weeks leading up to the close of postal voting. Join me again tomorrow night at 7:30 when we'll hear from the candidates for the city's top job, the Dunedin Mayoralty. Remember, it's your votes that will decide who runs the city for the next 3 years.